Something's wrong with my speaker.
Can you hear me, Mark?
I can, but I'm not. Tyler, can you say something? I'm not hearing you at all.
Neither am I.
Hey, Mark, I can't hear the trustees either. I can hear you.
What about now?
Yeah.
Can you hear us now?
You're not
Okay.
very loud, but yes, I can hear you.
I can hear you
Okay.
also.
I'll try to speak more clearly. Can you go ahead and call the roll, Mr. Houston?
Yes, let's see. We'll start the meeting at 7:02. Good evening, everyone. Mr. Raymert,
Here.
Mrs. Reed,
Here.
and Mr. Stubbs.
Here. Okay,
Everyone's-
the purpose of this meeting is a normal, regular scheduled trustee meeting, our monthly meeting. At this time, I'm going to open it up for visitor comments. Please state your name and address and limit your comments to 5 minutes, please.
I'll start, as usual. Mark Cross, 7444 South Stivers Road, Germantown, Ohio. Can you hear me?
Sure,
Yeah.
yes.
Okay, thank you. So Mark may be covering this, but does the board or specifically Mr. Houston have any information whether townships will receive any funds from the American Rescue Plan, the 1.9 trillion plan? I don't know if Mark, if you've received anything from the Ohio, Township Association or anything like that. Because as of right now, townships were excluded. You haven't?
I will be discussing this during my report.
Okay, I thought you would. So.
Yes.
So good, thank you. Did the board know that the property on 9967 Sugar has been sold? You know the old dilapidated house, Jake, on Sugar next to Sandy Branham?
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, it was sold on 3/2. It was sold for $28,000 by a Chad Woolley. I don't know if anybody knows him, but I went by it, and like I say, I'm certain it was always kind of a real problem for us and Jake, and especially for Sandy. I thought they'd tear it down, but actually they're fixing it up, and it actually looks pretty good.
Oh, really?
So, yes, if you get a
Nice.
chance. Yeah, I was very surprised. So I also, the same day I went by and looked at the property owned by Kyle Brummett that you guys had approved, several months ago at your zoning meeting. So my question is to Mr. Remmert. Remember you talked to the Ohio Department of Transportation about the access to that property, the private lane?
Yes, I do recall. I don't recall the
Did they
entire
ever get
conversation,
back?
but I do recall.
Did they ever get back to you? Do you know, or?
No, I spoke to them directly. There was no follow-up that I recall.
Okay.
I'd go back to the notes unless you recall something to be followed up
Yeah.
on.
It's a private lane, and I talked to Jeremy, earlier about this when that case was being discussed with the zoning commission. But it's terribly dangerous to get out of there to try to go onto that private lane to back onto Route 4 and EB. And I was wondering if it's something that could be addressed, and maybe Jeremy can kind of chime in on this. Hello?
I mean, what I recall, and don't hold me to this, I even hesitate to try to reiterate from memory what I recall, but there was no traffic study needed unless there was anticipated change in the traffic was going to be dramatic. And so I don't think that anything was going to change because of the Brummett case in particular.
Yeah, the business being there. Yeah, I just wondered if you had heard anything, again, because just to, when I went in there just to take a look at the property, I mean, just to get out of there, whether you want to go back on EB or try to get back on Route 4, it's just kind of dangerous, but so anyway, that's just the question I had of that. So also, Mr. Remmert, I want to thank you for allowing public comments at the last JED meeting, considering it wasn't really a JED meeting, you didn't need to do that. So I appreciate you doing that. So.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
That's all I have.
hopefully being consistent, we try to encourage comments and interaction whenever possible. So appreciate the interaction. Any other comments tonight? Okay. With that, I think we'll turn it over to Mr. Heaston for the fiscal officer report.
Excuse me, real quick. Did I miss the Pledge of Allegiance?
We did partake in that. Unfortunately, it seems like we may have been on mute in some way, so I apologize for that.
All right, I just wanted to make it a point, but if we've already done it, that's fine.
Yep. Thank you.
Okay, good evening again, everyone. So we did do the pledge. I was going to make note that we didn't, but okay, I will put it down that we did it. Okay, I have quite a number of items actually for tonight, so we'll get started. First of all, you have the minutes for two meetings, the March 8th regular meeting and the March 9th special meeting. Are there any changes to the minutes?
I have none.
I don't have any either.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes as submitted.
And
I
is
will
there a
second that.
second? Thank you very much. Hold on, I'm sorry. Give me just a second here. There we go. Okay, any discussion of the motion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. I sent you the financial reports for March. You have the March 31st fund status report. You have the March 31st cash summary by fund. You have the March receipt listings, and you have the March payment listing. And you might notice on the cash summary by fund report that you will see the $14,000 transfer that you approved at last month's meeting from the general fund has been now transferred into the road and bridge fund. Are there any questions about the financial reports?
It was clear. I'll make a motion to approve the March financial reports and authorize the payment of March bills, the warrants 50429 through 50456, and the vouchers 148 through 248.
I'll second.
Thank you. Is any discussion of the motion that Mr. Raymert made? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, thank you very much. That motion passes. Last month, we discussed the Ohio Township Association Risk Management Authority, otherwise known as OTARMA, renewal for the upcoming year. And you'll recall that the liability limit included in the premium was $3 million. And you requested that I reach out to Jackson and Perry Townships to check on the liability limits they use. Jackson Township Fiscal Officer Lisa Kazaric confirmed that they are also using a $3 million limit. And Perry Township Fiscal Officer Rhonda Benkin confirmed that they use a $4 million liability limit. Ms. Benkin also noted to me that the Perry trustees discussed decreasing their limit to $3 million this year, but they decided to stay with $4 million. So if you want to make any changes to our limit, we can probably still do so, even though this year's premium has been paid. So if you wish to increase the limit, it'll be an additional $2,400 to go to $4 million, an additional $3,629 for the $5 million limit, and an additional $4,793 for the $6 million limit. And if you decide you want to increase the limit, we should do so by resolution.
I'm good keeping it where we're at.
I'm also good keeping results. I appreciate you investigating it, looking into it, and seeing what other townships are doing, but it sounds like for the most part, they're keeping it at 3 or considering keeping it at 3, so I'm comfortable with leaving it where it's at.
Agreed.
Very good. We will do so. All right. On March 26th, Otarma IT specialist Aaron Willis, and again, this is not the Aaron Willis that lives in our township. He met with Mr. Holbrook, Mrs. Close, Mrs. Sewell, and myself. And the purpose of his visit was to assist with identifying and controlling internal IT risk and loss exposures. And following the meeting, Mr. Willis sent us a list of recommendations that were intended to assist the township in our risk control efforts. He has recommended that the township adopt a disaster recovery plan, an acceptable use policy, and a telework policy. And he actually provided some examples of each of those policies that we could use if we decided to implement that. He has requested that the township complete and return a statement of action taken addressing his recommendations within 60 days of his March 28th email. I believe this decision to implement any or all of his recommendations rests solely with you trustees. So if you wish to implement one or all of those recommendations, I would suggest that you appoint one of the three of you to prepare drafts for consideration at a future trustee meeting. I'll leave that open for discussion.
So I briefly reviewed the documents that you forwarded. I think they're pretty extensive. I think they're quality and useful. I'm not sure how useful they'll be for us in any near term. What I would say is, I know I'm not in position to draft any one of the three. They're extensively with working with all the multifunctionals here and understanding the systems inside out. So it would take a significant amount of effort to implement any of the three that I reviewed, is at least my opinion on it. So I'm just kind of curious, has this been a discussion or a review that's happened in the past? And I assume, based on what your comments were, that this is choice that we can make. It's not something that we have or we're mandated to implement.
I think that indeed is our choice to make that decision. So if we wanted to do so, we can. If not, we can tell him thanks, but no thanks.
And has that been a discussion in the past, or is this something as technology's developed or evolved, and with COVID, they think this is something they wanted to cover with folks?
I do not know the answer to your question. I don't think that Mr. Keener is on tonight's call. And so it'd only be if Mr. Holbrook or Chief Ansick might recall whether something was done like this in the past.
This is the first time that something like this has been even talked about. In the past, Otarma has sent representatives to talk about reducing risk as far as vehicles and use policies as far as for the police. But as far as technology is concerned, this was a first for all departments, as far as I'm aware.
Okay, thank you. You guys have any input or thoughts on it? I think they're useful. I mean, I do think they're good policies. One of them, telework, I don't know how much that would apply, although it could come into use. The acceptable use is pretty detailed, and again, these are pretty technical. I think places, this is for the Township Association, so I totally understand, but I think our resources are relatively limited here in German Township, and this would be an extensive amount of work to go and try to implement one of these plans end to end. And so I guess it's worth a future discussion if we want to talk about, doing this on a limited basis, or maybe a very limited scale, as, like a disaster recovery plan, what our initial, overarching ideas would be. But the way that he gave those examples, those were pretty time intensive, and I don't think we have the resources to establish something like that.
I would not disagree with your statement at all, Mr. Raymond.
So what I would say is I would volunteer to work with Haley to get a general understanding of maybe some of the stuff on email and the things that, you know, we're implementing with the website. I think there's a lot of stuff in the police department camp on, you know, backups and data that they have separate servers and stuff like that. I would leave that to Chief Anzik to say whether he feels like there needs to be a policy established for the police department or if he feels like that's already covered in his department. But beyond that, I have no further recommendation to partake in these 3 policies that were put out there.
And we can always revisit this later. So I don't see a rush. I don't see a 60-day deadline to do this. Is not.
So unless I'm misunderstanding what I'm hearing, I would think the best thing for me to do is respond to Mr. Willis that at this point, the trustees feel this is more than we can fit into the time frame he's looking at, and that we will continue to give it further consideration.
Yeah, I appreciate that.
Okay. I will do that. All right, let's move on. Sometime after I started as fiscal officer last year, I discovered that the township's depository agreement with First National Bank of Germantown expired at the end of 2015. Prior to that, nobody at the township or at the bank were aware of this situation. Given the pandemic and its effect on the bank's operations, they were not able to rectify this omission until very recently. I forward to you a copy of the depository agreement that the bank has created. This is very similar to the one that expired in 2015. The agreement will need the approval of the trustees, and so I would ask that you pass the following resolution. A resolution establishing the First National Bank of Germantown as a public depository for active, interim, and inactive funds for the period April 12th, 2021 and ending December 31st, 2025. And this would be resolution 2021-17.
I'll introduce resolution 2021-17, a resolution establishing the First National Bank of Germantown as a public depository for active, interim, and inactive funds for the period April 12, 2021, ending December 31st, 2025.
Is there a second to resolution 2021-17?
I will second that.
Thank you very much. Any discussion of the resolution? Hearing none, I will call the question. Mr. Raymert?
Yes.
Mrs. Reed?
Yes.
And Mr. Stubbs?
Yes.
Resolution 2021-17 is approved. Thank you very much. Moving on March 23rd, I received an email from the Auditor of State announcing that entities may now request a third consecutive agreed upon procedures, otherwise known as an AUP engagement. Previously, only 2 AUPs were allowed consecutively, and then a full audit was required after that. But now, after 3 AUPs, a full generally accepted government auditing standards, otherwise known as a GAGAS engagement, will be required. Since an AUP is significantly cheaper than a GAGAS, unless you direct me to do otherwise, I intend to request a third AUP the next time, which is going to be in 2022, and this would delay the next full GAGAS engagement until 2024. Is there any discussion on this item?
I don't see any reason to go with the full audit when we can do the AUP. So I have no issue with it.
Hearing no other issues with it, I will act accordingly next year when it comes time to do the audit. It will be an AUP then. Okay, this next item addresses Dr. Cross's question during visitor comments. And this follows up the discussion that you, Mr. Raymer, brought forward to last month's meeting, and that involves the $1.9 trillion American Rescue Plan Act of 2021, which was signed into law on March 11th. And just to give a little background for those who may not be aware, the bill does include $350 billion that's going to be given to state and local governments. The initial version of this act that was passed by the House of Representatives included townships on the list of local governments that are eligible for funds. Following modifications made by the Senate, the enacted law removed townships from the list. And obviously, this change has a significant impact on German Township, given the large amount of funds that are going to be distributed. As an example, based on numbers I received from Miami Township trustee John Morris, who's also the president of the Montgomery County Township Association, Germantown is expected to receive somewhere between $1,017,000 and $1,222,000. Farmersville will receive somewhere between $185,000 and $223,000. Montgomery County will receive $104 million and Dayton will receive $135 million. And as Dr. Cross pointed out, there is a significant effort currently underway by the Ohio Township Association, both Ohio senators, and I believe all of our state representatives to Washington, to try to convince the federal government to revise the definition of eligible local governments to include Ohio's townships. At this point, there is no action that I've heard of by the federal government to make any changes, but we continue to hope for the best. And Dr. Cross, does that address your question fully?
That does, Mark. Thank you very much.
Very good. Moving on. Along with Germantown Finance Director Pat Shively, I attended the pool board and the pool oversight committee meeting on March 23rd. The purpose of Pat and my participation in the meeting was to discuss the proceeds from the pool levy and the current finances of the city's pool fund, because the pool board and the oversight committee are evaluating options for updating the pool's pump and filtration system. And since you, Mr. Stubbs, were present at that meeting, I assume you may also have more information to share during your report. Also, with Ms. Shively, I attended a Parks Board and Parks Oversight Committee meeting on March 29th. And the purpose for our participation at that meeting was to discuss the upcoming parks levy. And Mr. Raymer, you were present at that meeting, and I assume you will also talk about this during your report. And I also understand the Parks Board met again on April 7th. So once you are ready to move forward to put the parks levy on the November ballot, and that may be tonight, but whenever you do that, the first step is to request that the county auditor certify the funds to be received by the proposed levy. And once the certification comes back from the auditor, then at a subsequent meeting, you will pass a resolution to actually place the levy on the ballot in November. Connected to that, I attended a webinar on April 2nd concerning the electronic filing of ballot questions and issues. A new state law that was effective January 1st now permits a political subdivision to certify a question or issue to the Board of Elections for placement on the ballot, to make that certification in electronic or paper form, and also required local boards of elections to accept such electronic certification. Prior to January 1st, ballot certifications were required to be done in paper form. So I will attempt to probably do an electronic certification when we get to that point. On March 25th, I attended the quarterly Montgomery County Township Association virtual meeting. Ohio Township Association Director Heidi Fott attended also and discussed the OTA's efforts to include the townships in the American Rescue Plan distributions, and also the OTA's work to convince state legislators to increase the force account limits for road maintenance and construction. These limits were last increased 17 years ago, and unfortunately, after that webinar, the legislature passed the legislation that would have increased the force account limits and did not do so by the amount the OTA had been working to include. They only increased it by 3%. Ms. Fott also provided a summary of the OTA's 2021 legislative priorities. And also attending the meeting was Pam Flagaman, who's the new executive director of the Convention Facilities Authority Board, which are the new owners of the Dayton-Montgomery County Convention Center. And Ms. Flagaman discussed plans for upgrades and improvements at the Convention Center. I reported at last month's meeting that I authorized the township's 2020 financial transactions to be posted on the Ohio Open Checkbook. At that time, the information had not been uploaded by the state. It has now been uploaded and is available to be reviewed online. And transactions for 2020 and also our prior years can be viewed at https://checkbook.ohio.gov/local/. Once on the website, you will click on the township tile and then the letter G to find our information. During March, I responded to one public records request, and that was for the January 31st ending balances in our general fund for the years 2016 to 2021, as well as the March 31st this year general fund ending balance. A reminder to you, as well as notice to the public, that there will be a special trustee meeting a week from tonight at 6 p.m., not 7 p.m. And the purpose of that meeting will be to open sealed bids for the township's 2021 chip seal road program and potentially award a contract for that program to the lowest and best bidder. And since this meeting is expected to last no longer than 15 minutes, the entire meeting will be held virtually using WebEx. There will also be a special trustee meeting on April 5th at 7:30 p.m. to discuss the JED with Germantown, Farmersville, and Jackson Township. And as the previous ones have been, this will also be a WebEx meeting. And finally, sorry, go ahead.
It is May 5th, sorry. The JED meeting is May 5th.
Did I not say May 5th? I apologize.
April, but it was
I meant to say it. Okay, May 5th, 7:30 p.m. JED meeting. A different time than our prior ones have been. Now, finally, I'm scheduled to attend the two-day Auditor of State Local Government Officials Conference webinar tomorrow and all day on Wednesday. I know the trustees have the ability to participate in that, and if you did not register to attend during the live streaming, those sessions can be viewed after the fact through the Auditor of State's website. And with that, I think that is everything. Is there any questions about anything?
No, Mark, I appreciate the thorough report as usual and the work of looking into some of these items and doing the follow-up. So appreciate that.
You're most welcome.
Okay, with that, we're going to turn it over to Mr. Anzik, Chief Anzik.
Good evening. First of all, Shred Day will be held Saturday, May 1st. We'll take paperwork and pills. like we always have. We'll do it like we did last year. So we look forward to everyone showing up. The police server is up and running. Due to a new server, we will no longer be able to run Outlook for our internal email. That being said, we had to register a domain name in order to use the new email. That domain name is germantownshippolice.org. Additionally, since we have that particular domain name, we will no longer need the german-township.org emails. So once we're up and running, we can discontinue paying for those. We have purchased a new copier that we had in a line item for the budget. The copier used by the trustees, trash and zoning is, for lack of a better term, ancient. The police department would like to give our current copier to the trustees and junk the ancient copier. Currently, the service cost for that ancient copier is over $1,000. The service cost for our current copier is $686.54 a year. So this could potentially save costs. The pros to it is it's no cost to you to get, for lack of a better term, our old printer, our hand-me-down. The con is after this year, parts will be unavailable for this copier according to the ones that service ours. The trustees have the option to purchase a new copier at the same price that we got from this company. However, that's up to you guys to discuss among yourselves. And last, we got both police cruisers in. They called us and said one of them, the lights just wouldn't shut off, just kept turning on, the headlights, or one headlight, the right headlight. They couldn't find a reason for it, so we asked them to reorder an additional cruiser. Would not accept the one that had the problems because he didn't want to have problems further on in the history of that car. So we do have one cruiser in. It's not marked up and on the street yet, but the other one will probably take 3 to 4 months to get that second one in. And that is my report.
Hey, sir, I guess quickly, can we discuss the copier piece? I appreciate the offer. The question, I guess, is with the current trustee copier being so old, do you know if there's parts available for it? I'm sure that might not have been a question asked.
What the service tech told Shauna and I is that they couldn't even figure out when it was actually first made. Ours is about 5 years old currently. I think we got it in 2014 or 2015. That one is probably 2005 or older. They can no longer get parts for it. So really, you've been kind of lucky that you haven't needed to have it serviced for it to keep running. But my understanding is they can no longer get parts at all for that one. The one we currently have in the police department, after this calendar year, they say they won't be able to get parts for.
If I may interject at this point, according to what Mrs. Close sent to me, the current police copier, if we move it over to use on the other side of the building, the service cost is $686, as Chief just mentioned, and that includes toner, parts, maintenance, and labor. And we pay 0.0246 per copy. If we purchase the new Konica Minolta copier, it will run 36 pages a minute, which isn't a huge issue for us on our end of the building. The purchase price would be $4,759, but the price per copy would only be 0.015 cents. And the service contract on that would only be $270 per year, again, including toner, parts, maintenance, and labor. So we can lease it or purchase it. I believe you're purchasing the police one, Chief, if I understand it correctly.
That is correct. We are purchasing it.
So, yeah, I don't know what the decision needs to be tonight. I don't know how many copies we're running off of it. Obviously, there's a break even with the service cost being roughly $700, almost $800 less per year. I mean, just from the service cost alone, you would be better off in like 6 to 7 years. And if you run, 500 to 1,000 copies a year, you're going to be better off than sooner than that. But I don't know the life of a printer or a copier. It sounds like they last pretty long around here. I don't really have a strong opinion. I don't use that copier very often. So does anyone else have any thoughts?
Well, my question is, so the service of the current one, my understanding is the service of the current one, we're paying a little over $1,000 a year for, but they can't get parts for it. So we're really just paying $1,000 a year for toner? I mean, is that what it boils down to? Because they can't get parts. So it's almost cheaper for us to just buy our own toner. I don't see us going through $1,000 of toner. I can't imagine. I don't know what else copied are on here, but that seems like a lot of toner.
The $1,000 cost, Mrs. Reed, will go away because that's the cost of our current copier here on this side of the building. That copier is going away. So the question we have in front of us is, do we take the old police copier for $600 some a month and then worry about the end of this year not being able to get parts? That the $600 contract also includes their labor to come and service it if there's ever any need. Or do we go ahead and buy it? I had a discussion with Mrs. Rohrbach sometime last fall when the police department was considering this purchase for themselves, and she asked me whether I wanted to replace our copier on our side and put it into the 2021 budget. And my comment to her was basically, it's running pretty well. We don't get a lot of service calls. Let's run it into the ground. But given the numbers, which I did not have at that time, I just had the concept. I think, Mr. Raymond, your thoughts might make sense. We may want to go ahead and do that out of the budget of the general fund, a little bit of the road fund, a little bit of the trash fund. But that would all be something outside of what we budgeted for this year. So I think we would want to do that via resolution.
Let's get clear though, because I think Evan made a good point, and I just need to clarify. The $1,000 that we pay today, $1,025, you were saying would go away. We would only go away if we got rid of it. Can you cancel the service cost if we plan to maintain and continue to use that, or is that something that we have to continue to pay regardless?
The $1,000 is going to go away because the copier on our end of the building is going to go away. So the maintenance service contract will go down to the current cost of the police machine, which is the $686.
Okay, I just want to make sure that we're understanding. So the copier that is near the kitchen area, I'm going to call it, that copier, no matter what, is leaving.
Yes.
Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay. Our options are to get the police copier for $686 or buy one outright. Those are our two choices, is that correct?
That would be correct. And at the end of 2021, the current police copier, which would become our copier on our side of the building, would no longer have parts available.
Okay. Well,
I'm speaking correctly, aren't I, Chief, on that?
That is my understanding. Yes, you are correct.
Thank you.
After we pay, if we pay $686, which I assume the police has paid this year, right, for 2021, we'll say the trustees pay the $686 for 2021. Do we have to continue paying $686 because there's not parts available? So you can make a service call, but if there's no parts, what can they service?
I'm not certain the answer to that, Mrs. Reed. I don't know.
I would assume they could make repairs if they didn't need new parts. I think it's just to keep it operational if they didn't need new parts, but I agree, it seems quite expensive because you think you would be able to call someone out for $300 if something broke out, they didn't need
Yeah.
parts, so.
So do we own the police one? We just pay for service?
That's correct. We own it. We own both of them.
So
And we
then
can't
why-
lease them both. But traditionally, I believe the township has always purchased the copiers rather than lease them. Because if you lease them, obviously there's a financing piece of that that's built into the monthly lease cost. And so it was always felt that it was better just to go ahead and buy it outright.
Does the one in the police office at this time, does it have the capability to staple, punch holes, do two-sided copies, make copies larger or smaller? Does it have capability to connect to our network?
But the new one the police department is getting does have the capability, I believe, to go into the network. But I see Mr. Holbrook shaking his head no on all your other questions, Mrs. Sewell.
Because the one that is in the hallway right now has all of those capabilities.
It does?
It does,
And in
but
fact, nobody had used the
they're unable
staple.
to use them because they don't have the proper software installed. We did not pay for that when we bought that machine, is my understanding.
So I know for a fact it's staple because I use that feature all the time. And in fact, I found that it had never been used until I started at the township.
This is Mr. Cleveland. Can I interject a little bit here?
Go ahead.
The copy machine you have now, it's not just a copier. It's a copier, printer. It does everything except make coffee, and it may even do that. And we probably have used so little function of that machine over the years we've had it that yes, the machine goes outdated. But when you get a new machine, only thing I would ask is it going to be online so that the people in the building can print to it, can scan to it, can use all of its functions? Because the current machine you have used only one function, that's as a copy machine. The machine has so many more functions that y'all have not used, and you have wasted your money with that machine over the years you've had it. So if you get a new machine, please make it to where it can copy, it can scan, it can do everything it can do in your network. That's my opinion.
I think there's a couple of choices. I appreciate it. Thank you. There's a couple of choices here that we have to make. Number one is, do you just want to keep the machine as is because we don't have to move it out, correct? Is that true?
That's correct.
Okay. But there's $1,000 service fee with that, correct?
No, the service fee is going away because that copier is leaving. We will have a $680 some service fee.
Is that decision been made that copier is leaving?
I have made that, but you can certainly reverse that decision. But of the two copiers we have, the better of the two is the current police one. So it makes more sense to keep the police one. Go ahead.
I'm just saying, I understand from age, does it have the same functionality as the one we have over here now? Okay, so Jeremy's shaking his head yes. So if it has the same functionality when we set it up, I agree. It's younger, it has the same functions, and it has a cheaper service charge. So does anybody object to that decision? Okay.
Okay, so
If it doesn't staple, at least bare minimum staple and make two-sided copies, it's useless to me. I might as well just keep the little ones as well.
It has all of those features, Haley.
The one in the hallway does.
Yeah, one in the hallway does, one in the police department has
the
it as
police,
well.
But I won't have access to the one in the police office.
I think they're saying
They're
the
gonna
current
move it
one in the
over
police
to
will
the
be moved to
hallway.
the hallway.
So the one in the police office right now has those capabilities.
Yes,
Can
And
it
that
take
will
a
come,
legal size document,
yes,
make it an 8.5 by 11?
yes.
Okay.
and it will be
I'm
moved
trying.
into the hallway, Mrs. Sewell, so it will be available just as the current one is to us.
Fine.
Okay,
I
clear.
need to
So that
step back
comes
for a
in.
moment. I need to step back for a moment and ask Mr. Cleveland to please tell us his address so we can do this officially, his comments.
Yes, 11858 Oxford Road,
Thank
Lynn,
you, sir.
Cleveland.
I appreciate
Not a
it. Thank
problem.
Okay, now you're just down to, I think, one or two more choices left. You got 686.54 for this copier that we have been donated from the police department. Thank you for that, Chief Anzik, for the upgrade. And then it will not have as much savings to replace it, though. I was stating based on $1,000 service, Carl. So for $700 service a year versus the $270 of a brand new one, you would only be saving roughly roughly $400 a year. So it would take well over 10 years to pay off a new one, to break even on that. So I wouldn't recommend buying a new one. I would, again, do as Mr. Houston said to Lori last year and try to live with what we have. Does anybody else have any thoughts on that?
No, just that, I don't see why we don't take the one from the police side, use it till it dies, or till they jack the price up. And then at the end of the year, budget this in. If we want a new copy, we should budget it in.
Agreed.
But it's not budgeted in, so let's just take the one from the police side and go with what we got. And if we want it in the future, we'll budget it at the appropriate time.
So my only thing is I agree, getting the one from the police over here. My only question is the $686 that we're paying out for service for toner. So it seems like, I know we've really tried to pinch pennies with our email addresses and using WebEx and doing all of that. But then in a sense, we're almost giving away almost $700 a year for toner. Because if it can't be serviced after 2021, or parts cannot be ordered.
So again, we can, at the end of the year, when it gets to November, December, we can discuss it for next year.
That was
That's
where
already
that
covered.
is where I was getting at, Mr. Sub. So, I think that that's something that needs to be looked at. I'm not sure it's something that we need to continue paying if the service it's not serviceable. So.
And I don't even know how often we've replaced the toner, even with the one that's currently on our side of the building. From my perspective, I don't know that we've replaced the toner since I started, but that could be an incorrect assumption. Mr. Holbrook might know. Certainly, go ahead.
I think Lori Rohrback took care of that most of the time. I want to make a couple comments. I agree with Miss Reed. I think if we do take the police department's machine, after they quit supporting parts for it, I don't think we should have a service agreement in my personal opinion. And when it breaks, you get rid of it. If it runs out of toner, you can buy toner off Amazon. You don't need to buy it through a service contract with the copier company. The second thing I wanted to say was, even when you declare both of those units excess, I would definitely put those on gov deals, because I would assume that somebody might want those for parts. If there's a company that does repairs on older machines that are no longer being supported, I would have to assume that they would gobble those things up for parts. So they might be worth a couple $100 instead of just throwing them in the garbage.
And something I neglected to say, Mr. Holbrook, thank you for raising that point, because I should have mentioned that the vendor has given us a $500 trade-in value. So if I understand it correctly, Chief, the purchase price of $4,759 will be reduced by the 500?
That's only if you do not take our old copier. It only applies to the current police copier. So if the trustees and the zoning and that side of the building was to purchase a copier, and we got a copier, they would give us $500 for the copier that's on the police side currently. The old one the one that's currently on the trustees side is so old they're not going to give anything for it, is my understanding.
So if we move the copier from the police to the other side of the building, we will not get a trade-in value at all for you in the police department.
Correct. But that's
Okay.
fine. We would rather, if it can still be used, then we'd rather give it to that side. You know, we're a big family here, so.
I don't want to get wrapped around the spoke on this, but I guess somebody tell me why we wouldn't take the $500 and allow the police to get that discount and keep the one we have over here and just cancel the service agreement and let it ride out until we have to buy a new one.
Well, if that's what you'd like to do, I'm fine with that. I'm just
definitely not upset. I appreciate you offering it to us. I just, financially, it seems like they're both going to be out of parts and have large service agreements. I guess the question is, do we feel better about, shifting that one over here that'll last X years better than this one will versus just taking the $500 in the bank today and letting it ride out and not having to try to set up, people using a different printer, et cetera, et cetera.
okay.
I mean, you guys,
And you're basically getting 2 years of service for free.
Yeah.
By trading it in.
All right. Edward, do you have a?
Since I've been here, I've only replaced the toner in the hallway one twice, but the first one was pretty early on. And then as far as I recall, we only had service on it once, and it was because that white piece on the cover, when you flip it up, the white piece had come off. I mean, we could have fixed it, but since we had the service agreement, they came out and fixed it. That's the only two things with the hallway. I mean, I don't want to jinx it, but it seems like it's all right how it is.
That's the only
I mean,
service
it seems
call I
to-
can recall, Mrs. Sewell. The only other problem I've ever had with our copier on our side was a jam. And Lori Rohrback, amazing woman that she is, was able to fix that jam when I couldn't.
I assume the service contract's already been paid for 2021, so that would get us through 2021 service contract. Is that correct, Mr. Houston?
I don't think we paid either service contract yet.
Okay. So we could, in theory, cancel the service contract and then just buy our own toner for the copier in the hallway that is currently there.
I believe we
Correct.
could, yes.
I would certainly hope the toner would be less than $1,000. So, and then we could budget for it and plan on if we need a new one at that point for next year. We could do that in hopes that it lasts for a while.
And if all else fails and we have to have a period of time without our copier, we know where the police copier is.
So 1 tube of toner for the printer in the hallway on the trustee side is going to run us between $60 and $80.
How much? I didn't hear that.
And it's between $60 and $80. That's just a quick Google search for it. So, and I've been here since May, June of 2019, and I've replaced it like once in August and once since then.
Okay. I think we're all pretty much agreeing on this one. I would say, Chief Ainsley, we appreciate, you offered it to us, but I think it's best probably for financially to take the bird in the hand, rather than two in the bush, take your $500 and let's move forward with what we have today.
Sounds
on
great.
this side.
Thank you.
Thank you, though.
That concludes my report.
Appreciate that. Mr. Holbrook.
Can I ask Chief a
Yeah,
question
sure,
that has
yeah,
nothing to
sorry.
do with the printer? I
Chief.
assure you. I'm sorry. My question is about the domain name. So I believe, and this is, I guess, a question for both you and Haley, since the domain name, I know that we were trying to get some continuity and easier for the public to be able to reach everybody easier, so that the end of the domain name rather was all the same. Was it not possible for you to use the current domain name that we already had the German-township.org?
I believe that we may have been able to. I'm not positive. I'd have to ask.
Okay, I just thought, for the public trying to reach us and other entities and looking professional, if it was all the same, because I think that was our goal when we started this whole email thing, was to get everybody kind of the same domain name where it was German-Township. And I believe, and this is kind of a question for Haley, because she's kind of taken the ball with this, have we already paid for those two? Because you said we can get rid of them, but I think we've paid for them for a year. Is that correct, those two domain names, or are they paid monthly? Because that's
Right now, it's paid monthly.
okay. So right now it is paid monthly. So I'm going to say otherwise it's $144. So I don't know if it's something that you can look into or it's something that can be changed at this point, but that way it would keep the continuity for all of us to have the German-Township.org. Because I think that was kind of one of our goals when we started this, was that they would all kind of match.
The website also reflects the one through Google.
The German-Township. Okay. I mean, if it's feasible, to me, it just makes the most sense for the police to match, the zoning and the trustees and the fiscal officer and everybody to match. It just makes it easier than having multiple different domain names.
Let me look into it and I'll get back with you. How's that?
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Holbrook?
All right, got a pretty quick report tonight. The first item on my agenda is, as you know, we ordered the new backhoe. It is currently being built, and we hope it'll be arriving sometime in the first part of July. With that being said, I need to declare the existing John Deere 310 SG as excess. We're going to be putting that on Gov Deals somewhere around the 6/11 of 2021 to try to let it run for 2 weeks before the new one shows up. So like I said, I'd like the board's approval to declare that old backhoe as excess to be disposed of on Gov Deals.
Do you need is that a resolution, Mr. Houston?
Yes.
Okay. So I
Yes.
believe that's resolution 2021-18.
That is
If that's
correct,
the correct
Mrs.
number.
Reed.
I will make resolution 2021-18 to declare the John Deere 310 SG as excess to be sold on Gov Deals.
Is there a second to resolution 2021-18?
Yes, I'll second.
Any discussion of the resolution? Hearing none, I will call the roll. Mr. Raymert,
Yes.
Mrs. Reed,
Yes.
and Mr. Stubbs.
Yes.
Resolution 2021-18 is approved.
Thank you. Second item is, I shot y'all an email this morning about the permissive motor vehicle license tax increase. As you may recall, in the November report on the 9th, I informed the board about the ability of the board to increase the license plate tax by $5. This would possibly be an increase of around $21,000 annually. But we need to have that information and all that procedure done by July 1st of 2021 and submitted to the Ohio Bureau of Motor Vehicles to start collection in 2022. If we don't get that done by July 1st, it'll be 2023 before we can do any collections. Does the board put any thought to that?
Well, I have a question, and it may have been addressed at the November meeting. I feel like there was some discussion. With the $5 permissive motor vehicle tax, would that only be included to residents of the unincorporated, or would it also be included in the incorporated? The city and the township? Okay. Thank you.
It is the unincorporated, but my understanding is this started out with just one $5 permissive tax in the 60s, and now we're up to potentially 11. And I think 2 of them relate to township $5 levies that we can put in there, but I think municipalities have those as well. So I think municipalities actually have up to 5 that they could enact. So that's the only issue I have with it. I know that the road budget could absolutely use incremental funds, and so that's why I'm inclined to say yes. The only struggle I have with it is this almost seems like a backdoor way to levy taxes on people when they haven't passed them themselves. And when we're up to 11 of these potential things in the county, that seems pretty excessive to me, to be hitting people with that kind of taxes when they're not even voting on something like this.
I sent some information to all of you late this afternoon. You may not have had a chance to look at it, but it included several hyperlinks to look at the ORC rules for this, as well as an analysis of what each of the Montgomery County entities is currently collecting for permissive road tax, license tax. There is a $30 limit. So even though there are more than 6 available to the counties and other entities, you cannot go over $30. Presently in German Township, our unincorporated residents are paying $25. The same is true with the city of Germantown. People who live there, they're currently paying $25 in permissive vehicle tax. But we can add one $5. There are 2 available, 2 townships. As I read the ORC, both of them are almost identical. So you choose one of the 2 if you decide you want to go forward with this. And Mr. Holbrook is quite correct. The process will involve a publication of a public hearing, 2 public hearings that will be held. That has to be published 2 weeks in a local paper, which we would use the Germantown Press. After the publication, the 2 meetings are held. The second meeting has to be held between 3 and 10 days after the first meeting. So that would require a special trustee meeting. And then we will have to get that to the county by the 1st of July. Now, Mr. Holbrook, in your analysis back in November, you mentioned that this needed to be a unanimous vote of the trustees. I haven't found that on the ORC. If you could send that to me with your where you got that understanding, or we could simply ask Mr. Peterson to give us an opinion on that.
Just to clarify, Mark, it's my understanding that there's only one additional levy, $5 levy that's available to the township. The old $5 levy was 4804.18, which was enacted some time ago. And then that was the most that townships could apply for. We were at the max. Then with the new House bill that passed that increased the gas tax, gave us the ability to enact 4804.181, which is the new original one. So in reality, we only have one choice, and that's the .181. So you wouldn't pick between the 2 because the 4804.18 has already been enacted.
Not by us. We're not collecting anything, are we? Directly as the
I'm pretty
township?
sure we are.
Are we?
I
Okay.
thought we were. I could be wrong, but I thought we had already enacted that, and we
So
only
the
had
20 of the $25, we're already collecting 5 of that 25.
correct.
Okay.
And then,
4 to the county and then 2 to the township. So for us to be collecting 25 right now, 5 of it has to be 100% distributed to us.
right. The 4804.18 is 100% German Township.
Correct.
And the other one
And-
was split between the county, I think.
No, 181 is also 100% to the township.
No, correct. But we actually have more than that.
And if we're doing
There's
1/8,
3 other.
that's 100% to us too.
There's $25 being collected today. You can get 30 maximum. Of the 25, there's 3 that are going to the county right now. I'm sorry, that would only be, no, there's 4 going to the county right now. $20 going to the county, and then the 1 is going 100% to us. Ones that are counties, though, they do get split in certain ways to where we actually get some of those funds as well. One of them, we're getting 30% of it. Another one, we're getting 30% of it. Another one's going 100% to the county. And then the last one is also 100% to the county. So of 2 of them, which is $10, we're getting 30% of that. So we're getting $3 of the county's 20, and we're getting 100% of our 5.
It's counted by how much each person is paying. It's not, if the county's given $20, that's 20 of the 30. It's not, you don't take the percentage of what German Township's actually getting. It's what the person's getting charged. So there's only, you can only charge them $30 in all those different ORC codes, or all of those 4804.18 and 4804.181. Of all of those, they can only total up to $30, regardless of where the money goes. You understand what I'm saying? So if you go and get license plates,
go ahead, Jeremy.
I said, if you go get license plates, and of all those sections that you're paying into, you're paying $25 currently right now. Okay, the county might get $20 of it, and the township gets 100%, which is $5 of it. The way the county divvies it up doesn't matter. You can only add $5 more. So if the township is getting 30% of that money that the county's taking in, that number really doesn't mean much. That doesn't add into that $30 total.
No. But
agreed. I guess what that is today the county, or there's $25 being charged on you when you go get a new new tech.
Correct.
$25. Of that 25, $5 is coming 100% to us from 47.40 whatever it is here. Let me see.
4504.18.
0.18. Yep, $5 is coming to us to 0.18. Of the 4 for the county, of that $20 that they're collecting, there's 2 of the $5 fees that have a 30% incremental or allocation to us. So that 30% of that $10 is $3. So my point is, we're collecting $3 out of their 20 that they're collecting. We're collecting 5 out of what we're collecting from our own. We could implement another one for 5, so $13 of every $30 would be coming to us if we put another $5 on there.
Correct.
I mean, I like the fact that it's capped at $30. Again, I still stand by. I think this is a little bit of a loophole. I knew just reading in it, trying to understand this more, because I do remember you bringing this up, and I don't fully remember having a full discussion on it. I tried to read a little bit about it, and a lot of people have had issues over the year that this was kind of a backdoor way to tax people. And so that's the consternation I have with it. I know you guys are absolutely struggling with your funds. I think we should be able to pass the levy here. I feel like we should be able to communicate, the needs of the community and pass the levy. I guess the question I would have is, if we did implement this in the time being, and we did get around to passing the levy, and we want to back off this, how do we get out of this or let this lapse? Does anybody know that? Because I haven't seen that.
My understanding is if you contact the BMV, you can have it taken back off by resolution.
the $5 that we currently are paying, is that what you're saying?
Any one of them, all of them.
Well, we can't, we only can affect the one that we've approved.
Correct. The 2 that we currently have, the $2 $5.
The one we've enacted, you're saying, and I understand that now, but we could have that removed at any time if we wanted to by resolution. And the new one we can enact by resolution, but only with notice to the public and 2 public hearings.
But we could rescind that down the road if we wanted to as well.
Down the road, yes, either one or both.
Correct.
Here in Montgomery County, the only township that is currently collecting $30 is Harrison Township. Jefferson Township is actually at 20, and everyone else is at 25, all the other townships.
And just so you know, Mark, the statement of it must be a unanimous vote came from a discussion I had with Stephanie Cook, who's the assistant chief of the Ohio Bureau of Motor Vehicles. Now, that was a phone call And I remember specifically when she told me that, it kind of surprised me. But after thinking about it, it didn't, because of what Tyler's saying. It's such an important decision to be made that it probably would have to be unanimous. Now, I know that the ORC does not state anything about it being unanimous, but I would have to assume that Ms. Cook from the BMV kind of knows what she's talking about. Now, I could reach out to her again and find out for certain, but you know, if it does have to be unanimous, just hearing the board talk right now, that might be a struggle. So
I see that.
I know what I think. I'll let you guys, if you guys have questions or anything.
I'm not a big pro-tax person, so I'd rather run a levy and have people vote on it, is my opinion.
all right.
It's only $5 too, so, per vehicle.
That's true. So I know, Mr. Holbrook, I'm kind of in line with them quite a bit, where I just hate to throw tax on people or throw, $5 per vehicle on someone, especially when we're already getting $8. I could see some people balking at the idea of us getting $13 a car. I know in my term here so far, 2 road levies, I believe it was 2 road levies, have failed. So I think that we were super close with one of them, within just a few votes of it passing. So I don't know if that's something that we need to look at doing again. I'm not sure where everybody feels on that, but I'm more comfortable at least trying that, seeing how it goes, seeing the reaction from the community and kind of their thoughts on it before we add this $5 to their tags.
But I'm also willing to go through the process too and get the public's feedback. If they're not upset by it, if no one shows up to a meeting and no one seems to care, I'm fine with that too. So I have no problem starting the process. I'm not going to commit yes or no, but I'd like to let it play out and see if people are upset, we won't do it. If they are for it, we'll do it. I mean, I'm all for playing it out and see where it goes, but I don't want to commit one way or the other.
I don't know how this, let's see, prior to the adoption, board trustees shall conduct 2 public hearings. I don't know if we have to vote before public hearings. I think, Mr. Stubbs makes a good point, because, what I was going to say, where I would weigh in on this is, I'm not a huge fan, but knowing the need, I would be okay with $5 and we wouldn't make this contingent, but that it would come off if we could pass a levy. I think he's got a better idea that if we can get this in front of the people and start to explain the need, because people will realize what we're actually trying to do here because of the need behind it. Maybe it'll help, even if they're not behind this, at least it'll inform them on the type of need that we have in the road department right now, and maybe can work to our advantage in the future.
As I read the ORC connected with this additional item that we have available to us, it simply says, prior to the, let me get the exact language. Prior to the adoption of a resolution, you need to have the 2 public hearings, the notice in the paper twice, et cetera, et cetera. So I think what you could do if you want to start the process to let you get feedback from the public is you could introduce a resolution, second it, and then we table it until we go through the process of the public hearing and the notices prior to those public hearings. I think that would be appropriate, but we could double check with Mr. Peterson if you have any concerns about my thoughts on that issue.
I don't have any concerns. I think it makes sense.
Yeah, we can bring it up in the May meeting.
The only,
and then have the.
Yeah, go ahead. Well, I was just saying, I think the only issue is, Jeremy, you correct me, we've got to have this, when is the deadline on this?
July 1st.
We have to have the full process approved and submitted. Okay. You're saying we can bring it up in the May meeting and maybe get these 2 public hearings
May
done?
meeting and then schedule or could we bring it up, we advertise the May meeting as the first hearing?
Okay.
And then have one special meeting after that. Is that possible?
Mm-hmm.
But in order to have a public hearing, don't we need to have something that we've at least introduced? connected to that public hearing? That's my point. I think you need to introduce a resolution. We just don't vote on it.
Okay. I'll introduce resolution 2021-19 to introduce a $5 additional permissible vehicle tax for the township.
Is there a second to the introduction of resolution 2021-19?
I'll second.
Would there be a motion? Would someone like to make a motion to table resolution 2021-19 pending the outcome of the public hearing process?
Yeah, I'll make a motion to table resolution 2020-19 pending the public hearing. I believe that it's going to be on May 10th.
The first one would be May 10th, is what you're suggesting, Mrs. Reed?
I believe that's what Mr. Raymer said, that would be our regular scheduled trustee meeting, is that Monday, May 10th.
Okay.
Is that acceptable to do at our meeting? Do we need to do it prior to our meeting, or just lump it all into our regular trustee meeting?
We will have to give notice in the paper. Hold on, just let me double check again. Notice, date, time, and place, both hearings by publication, once a week on the same day for 2 consecutive weeks. The second publication shall not be less than 10, but not more than 30 days prior to the hearing. So we can't be less than 10 days before May 10th, which would say it needs to be in the Germantown Press on April 29th, the second publication. And the first publication would have to be on the 22nd. We would have to have that in their hands, Jeremy, I believe, by Friday of this week. Would that be correct?
Correct, or Monday at noon at the latest.
So I think you could do a May 10th first hearing, and then we'll have to have set a date for the special meeting for the second hearing.
And the second hearing, I know you read this previously, the second hearing has to be within so many days of the first hearing, correct?
Not less than 3 and not more than 10 after the first hearing.
Okay. So do we need to go ahead and set that second public hearing date, or can we do that at the May 10th meeting?
We're going to need to publish that as well as the first hearing date in the notice in the paper. So we need to set that date tonight.
Set that date as well. Okay. Within 10 days of that.
So it'd be sometime, and I presume that is calendar days. I think we should assume that anyway, since it doesn't say one way or the other. So I believe that would be sometime prior to the 20th.
So the 17th, Mr. Stubbs, I think suggesting the 17th, is that correct?
Yes.
Does that
Works for me.
work for
I
me?
have a board meeting that night. I would prefer if we could find a different night.
For the 18th, would the 18th work? I don't know if this meeting room is open either.
18th would work for me.
18th is fine.
What did you say, Mrs. Sewell?
I will not be available the 24th, so.
I won't either. I plan to deliver a baby that day.
Let's hope you're still around on the 18th.
Right.
So the 18th seems to be okay, Mr. Houston?
The 18th works for me. Seven o'clock both nights?
Yep.
Okay, we have a motion to table. I didn't hear a second to table.
I'll second.
Thank you. All in favor of tabling the resolution 2021-19?
Aye.
Very good. And then let's have a motion to do those two hearing dates.
I'll make a motion to have the two hearings for the $5 permissive motor vehicle tax on Monday, May 10th, and then a follow-up public hearing on Tuesday, May 18th, both at 7 p.m.
Is there a second to the motion?
I'll second.
Any discussion?
I guess I
All
just
in
have one
favor?
question. I mean,
Go ahead.
are we just going to, open it up for questions? I mean, present something? I mean, what's going to be presented at the meeting?
I would suggest that you have a hearing no different than you would have for a zoning hearing with proponent, opponent, the discussion, a presentation probably by either one of the trustees or Mr. Holbrook as to what the issue is and how it would impact our residents.
So I think that makes complete sense. Mr. Holbrook, will you be the person that we can count on to present the topic or the issue? We'll hear statements by the community that participates or the public.
Yes, I can do that.
Thank you.
I just have a question. I guess it only really pertains to me. We would not be voting on the resolution obviously not at the first public hearing, but not at the second one either. Is that correct?
Well, you certainly could at the second one, because if you wait till the June meeting to actually approve, if you decide to approve the resolution, it will not become effective until 30 days after its adoption, which would take us past July 1st. So you would need to approve it sometime in the month of May to give the 30-day period of time, because this resolution and potential increase is subject to referendum by the citizens, should they choose to do so.
I'm only asking because that's 5 days before my due date, and in case, if I wasn't there to vote, I wanted to make sure he said it had to be unanimous. I didn't want to be the one playing any negative role in that, so.
Well, let me reach out to Mr. Peterson with two questions. One, does it have to be unanimous? While Mr. Holbrook checks with the BMV, sorry. And two, let me make sure that Mr. Peterson is comfortable with that structure for a public hearing for something like this.
Okay, I mean, I will be here unless I'm in the hospital, but, I just don't want to be the one to mess this up. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Holbrook. Anything else?
Yeah, that's all I have.
Okay, we need to vote on the motion to, motion to table the resolution. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The hearing none, resolution 2021-19 is tabled pending the public hearings.
And you have your motion for the meetings. You're all set there, Mr. Heaston?
Oh, that was, okay. Let me look at my notes. We did the hearing. We did the motion to table. This motion, so one we had not voted on was actually the motion on the hearing dates. My mistake, forgive me. So let's now vote the motion on the hearing dates. All in favor?
Aye.
And any opposed? So we had already approved the tabling, and now we've approved the hearing dates. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Mrs. Sewell for zoning.
Yes, so my report seems pretty lengthy, but it's mostly just FYI information. So last month I reported that I did have a few in resolution violations. I am working with all of those property owners. I've been in touch with all of them. So since we're just coming out of winter, I'm kind of giving them a little bit more time with those things since we are in the wet season now. New information, I've got several pending permits, just waiting for documentation and or funds, from the applicant. I do have a couple pending cases, a lot split on Creek Road and a variance on EB. The variance on EB is a change, in the, school building at Abundant Life. So they did want to change that, so it does have to go through the process again. The next zoning commission hearing is to potentially recommend some changes to the resolution, which you all will see afterwards. Their hearing is on the 20th, and the zoning appeals obviously would meet with the cases coming up. So those have not been determined at this time. The new email, by the end of the week, I should have auto reply set up except for the trustees and chief's email now. I will hold off on that. The auto reply will advise the senders of our new email addresses, but the emails will also be forwarded to the new email. So it's not just going to reject the email senders may send, it will forward it to us. Again, if anybody has any questions about the emails, just shoot me a text or an email. That's it.
Thank you. Okay.
Hold on.
Yep.
Yeah.
What are your current office hours? I had someone ask the other day.
So my office hours are by appointment only right now due to COVID. They can reach me on my cell phone, which is 937-696-0058. Call, text anytime, or obviously by my email.
All right, when do we think we'll have office hours back?
That is completely up to you guys. I was thinking when I do start back the office hours, have some office hours on Mondays, some office hours on Fridays, just to give a little bit more than the 2 hours that we had previous to COVID on Tuesdays. But that is completely up to you guys, because you're my bosses.
Yeah, we had talked about this, about like separating the hours and making it more available. And I'm completely fine if there's people that are trying to seek her for office hours. But what I'm hoping for is that anybody reaches out, she's being receptive within 24 hours is kind of the standard that Haley and I have discussed. And so if people want to discuss, you reach and send her an email and say, hey, I'd like to meet with you. Haley should make time to be available on that Monday or Friday, but we can post hours if that makes more sense for people.
Yeah, just to have people have a place to be able to get the information they need. So.
The only thing that I tell people is typically on the weekends, I try to have some more family time than I get through the week. So if I don't respond during the weekend, I'll definitely respond on Monday.
Right, that's reasonable.
Yeah, what was supposed to be for 1 or 2 hours? What was on
it was from 2 to 4 on Tuesday.
2 to 4 on Tuesday. So.
Well, they had two. It was 2 days. It was Tuesday and Thursday, I believe. One was early, let's say 10 to noon or so, and then the one on Thursday was later. So you could catch the people out. So there was 2 days, four or 6
I never had 2 days. So. Yeah, and the issue with only the 2 hours was that I would spend either 1, all the time on the phone catching up on phone calls, messages that were left, or 2, people coming in and then, I'd have to get to the messages at some point. So the 2 hours just wasn't enough.
Did the phone calls now forward to you, or?
They do not forward to me, but on the voicemail in my office, it does leave my email and my phone number, my cell phone number. So, and every single time I check my voice messages in my office, I've already talked to them because they called my phone. So.
Yeah, I mean, at some point, we're definitely, we're moving past this COVID. There's a lot of things that are going to change. So, I don't know what the right answer is, but I would say let's continue to look at it. But I would say like a June 1 makes like a smart sense, or maybe July 1, because you're right at the mid-year. But like somewhere here in the near future, we need to put down some time. So why don't you think about it and bring us back something in May, and let's consider it, because we are getting to the point where everyone's feeling more comfortable to visit and those types of things. I don't know that it. Just thinking about it makes sense necessarily before we're willing to have people back in here, but we can talk about it at the next meeting. Let's all think about it, because I think at the same time that we're opening up the township building for public meetings would be the same time that you would be opening up the offices for people to come visit. So.
Absolutely, and I know a lot of know a lot of people review these when they watch it on YouTube. So I am even open for people to give me, you know, some feedback on what might be a good time, you know, days Monday through Friday, because I know everybody you know, we've got first, second, and third shifters. I met with somebody in my office at like 8:30 one night, just because that's when it worked for them.
Yeah, I think Haley, just think about it, like what makes sense for your experience since you've been in the role, the amount of time you think would be useful. But I mean, carving out time, you'll put use to it regardless of whether people come and visit, you know?
Absolutely.
And
Every time.
so think about that. Let's come back, let's talk it in May, and let's put something in a plan in May.
Let's do it.
Okay. Any other questions?
No.
All right, so we'll do that in May. I'll make a note of that. Okay, so I've got a few things. I'll try to get through them rather quickly, but the first one is JED meeting. We did have a JED meeting it was April 8th. I'm not sure if that was Wednesday or Thursday last week. I can't recall, but I jotted down some notes. The meeting was not an official meeting, but we had said on the call, Mr. Cross, that it was not recorded. We believe that we do have audio recording, so we're going to try to make sure that we have that and post that, even though it wasn't an official meeting. We didn't have one other JED meeting that was not an official meeting, and we did post that video, so we're trying to be as transparent as possible on this. As far as meeting notes, because of this meeting, there was not a new draft that was issued since our last meeting from the counselor. We did not have any substantial changes to discuss. What we actually went through was the schedule of how the JED would progress going forward. And I'm trying to find my notes. Thank you. I'm like scrambling. You know, we have several next steps of what needs to happen to get us, you know, through May. Primarily, that's Brenda Weimer from Dinsmore and Shoal passing out a updated JID contract that has all the latest changes, along with trying to have the latest exhibits for that contract ready. She's going to circulate that in advance, 7 days in advance of our May 5th meeting, so we can all have time to read it, digest it, and understand if we have any changes we want to discuss at the May 5th meeting. Everyone's going to come to the May meeting and have that discussion, and hopefully we'll be in a good place with the contract after the discussions we've had to date. After May 5th, then we just covered the schedule of things that needed to occur to move the JED forward, related to visiting with the school board, talking to them, passing them a petition, having a public hearing, listening to the public comments, and potentially incorporating those comments and having another public hearing. So we just went through those steps and what needed to happen to move the JED forward. So if there's no questions on the JED, I'll move to my next topic. Okay, it's the Parks Board. As Mr. Heaston had said, there's been a couple of Parks Board meetings since the last time we met. As you guys are aware, at the end of the year, the levy will expire. There's currently a $500,000 levy on the, or not on the ballot, but it's active. It expires at the end of the year. There's been discussion about having a renewal, a replacement, and even a potential renewal and additional $500,000, because there are incremental funds, again, needed from another entity, which is the Parks Board. The renewal currently would bring in about $73,000 a year, which is what it's bringing right now. So that's no change on a renewal for the $500,000. Currently, the renewal is costing the public $9.82 per 100,000 assessed value. A replacement would actually generate $103,000 because it would step up the basis of the property values to today's values, and that would incrementally, not incrementally, it would totally cost, replacement would totally cost $17.50 per $100,000. So it does bring in a little bit more. It's definitely not as much as what a 1 mil levy would do. What had been pretty well aligned by the Parks Board and discussed there and then taken to council this last week was a replacement, which is that step up in value of assessment values, and so it would generate potentially more money. The thought was we would not get a chance really in the COVID environment and today's environment passing the $500,000 and an additional $500,000 to get to a 1 mil. But it was universally agreed that the current funds are not sufficient, and that half mil renewal and a half mil replacement would be seen somewhat the same potentially by the public. So the best thought was to go with the replacement. So that's what I'm to bring to you guys today. Mr. Houston, you can help me out with procedure, but my understanding is we can vote tonight by resolution to pass that to get this thing moving. Is that the correct next step?
That is the correct next step. And let me read you the language that the resolution will have. And just to confirm, this is going to be Resolution 2021-20. A resolution requesting that the Montgomery County Auditor's Office certify to German Township the total current tax valuation of German Township incorporated and unincorporated areas and the dollar amount of revenue that would be generated by a recreational levy, parks, a 1/2 mil levy for a, I believe, 5-year period of time of replacement tax, beginning tax year 2021 with first half collection in 2022 to provide funding for parks and recreation purposes as authorized in the ORC section 5705.19 subsection H to be voted on the November 2nd, 2021 general election ballot.
Before I introduce the resolution, which I know we can do this in the discussion point, I'll just say that, I had asked the question to the more experienced people on the park board of what would be the incremental funds and things that would be used for. They actually had an impressive list, and I'll just name just a couple of them. There was a promise to have Weber expanded to handle all the soccer on that side of the field or on that side of the road. Kircher parking, obviously, if you guys drove down there, you know what the parking lot is like at Kircher. Talking about gazebo, needing paying and maintenance, playground equipment, and how expensive they are nowadays, the restrooms at the parks, potentially bleachers at fields, maintenance on ball fields, basketball courts. I mean, they went on and on and on. There's not even recreational programs that we don't even talk about, like arts and those types of things. So, I mean, they had quite an impressive list of things that could happen. Now, just know if the levy doesn't pass, we lose the funds, the $70-some thousand a year that we have that now covers, mowing the fields and all the maintenance that comes along with it and those types of things. So, just want to give you guys a little bit of background before I introduce resolutions. Is there any questions before that?
So we're going with the replacement at the same value, at the same mill?
Yeah, half mil. Yeah. So, do you have any questions there?
I don't have any questions, but I was on the park board, I think, for 2 years. I think they spend their money very wisely. They ask for donations, and we were fortunate enough to live in a community that donates quite a bit of things in the sand and putting up the fences and stuff for baseball. And so they really take their money and make it go a long way from what I saw when I was on there. So obviously I have a few kids and we use the parks all the time. And so I'm a big, proponent. I think the parks really help the community, so.
I agree, and with that, I'll introduce Resolution 2021-20 for a half mil replacement levy for the parks.
I'll second.
And this resolution will be the language that I read earlier, which will include a 5-year period of time, correct?
Correct.
All right. Any discussion of Resolution 2021-20? Hearing none, I will call the question. Mr. Raymert?
Yes.
Mrs. Reed?
Yes.
And Mr. Stubbs?
Yes.
Resolution 2021-20 is adopted, and I will reach out to the Montgomery County Auditor to get the information. And at our regular meeting in May on, I believe it's the 10th, we then can hopefully pass the resolution to place the levy on the ballot.
Okay, thank you. Staying on the Parks Board, the last meeting that we had, it was discussed about voting for Haley Sewell for the advisory board for the parks or oversight board for the parks. and was brought up a question about, conflict of interest. It was looked into with our council at the county, and they also talked to the folks at the city of Germantown. No one could identify a conflict of interest, but everyone agreed it probably wasn't the best interest for us to look at her joining potentially the Parks Board versus the oversight. And I think that they had approached Haley, those that do the appointments for the board, and had a discussion with Haley. I wasn't there or a party to that discussion, but my understanding is Haley obliged and said that she'd be happy to join the board rather than the oversight. And so I just want to let you guys know that we don't vote on the board members, but Haley has been appointed to the board rather than oversight. So just want to give you guys an update on that one.
Okay, I feel much more comfortable with that. Not just you, if it was any other employee of the township, police officer, whatever, because I know if it was the three members of the oversight, it's city council, German Township, and then at large.
Mm-hmm.
If the city tried to put an employee on that our large spot, I know I'd be throwing the biggest fit ever. So by the same flip of the coin, that's why I had an issue with it, and
yep.
I think it's just, it doesn't look right, whether it be an employee of our township or the village of Germantown. So the park board is a much more appropriate place, in my opinion, for employees of either.
Yeah, and I wasn't really, I didn't really know the difference before I talked to them.
Okay.
So yeah, I completely agree with you.
Perfect.
Yep. So I think we're all good there. The last one I have is, I just want to bring this up in advance that something could be coming. I've been notified verbally that the zoning commission will have an opening on it coming up. So I just want to give you guys a heads up. I don't have anything in writing. I've reached out to the person and asked for it in writing. If they do return their intent to leave the zoning commission, then we will have an opening. And as we've done in the past with the zoning Board of Zoning Appeals, posted that publicly. So I just want to give you guys a heads up that over the next month that you could see a posting potentially on that if I do get notified that somebody wants to step down from the zoning commission. Okay.
And just keep in mind the 6 or 7 people you had last time apply as well.
Absolutely. Okay. That's it, Mrs. Reed.
All right, we actually had 2 meetings since our last regular trustee meeting. I had a fire oversight meeting on the 5th. It was very short, but we hadn't had one in a while, so it was really a good thing to be able to meet. They have gotten donations for a grain feed extractor, which I guess they have never had before. So that is, they said that they've needed it for several years, and so they're going to be purchasing that through donations. I know Roland Farms donated, and there was 2 other outside, I believe they're outside the city limits and the township limits, but they donated to help them purchase that. We also got donation, I believe it's from Butler Electric. I don't have my notes right in front of it, for a new chainsaw. So that was good. They had 2 house fires, both of them are from cooking. One of the house fires they unfortunately thought was a total loss, but they were very thankful for the community for donations for the family. There were some individuals that stepped up and there was kids involved and got clothes and different things for the family, and so they really appreciated the outpouring of support. The senior center, we had a meeting on the 7th on that same week on the Wednesday. They are still closed. Unfortunately, the governor has not lifted any of the restrictions or guidelines yet. They're really hoping that happens. Part of the struggle is that they are a senior center and that is their name. And because of that, the restrictions are even harsher, I guess, if you will, as opposed to like a community center. They are having like senior meals on Monday where they're serving, it's kind of like a drive-through. They did serve 50 meals on Sunday. They have, 58, I apologize, 58 meals on Sunday. Let me see what else. They thought they were gonna have to get a new HVAC unit, and luckily they were able to repair, just kind of work on that one a little bit. But that is something down the road they may have to be looking into. Obviously not much activity right now due to COVID. I think that was really it. They're going to continue to do the drive-through lunches. They do have frozen meals that can be picked up for seniors. They have certain dates. I believe that was the 12th of March, and then I don't know if they're doing it every Monday or if it's every 12th, but that is something that if you're interested in, you can call the senior center and they can get you signed up for those weekly meals to be picked up. So I know several seniors are taking advantage of that. They did compliment the library because the library is supplying craft drive-through where they supply 30 crafts. And so you can drive through the library and pick up crafts, and they were very appreciative of the library helping out with that. So that is all that I have.
With
Hey,
the pool,
Tyler.
we increased. Yes,
Hey, Tyler, can I ask a question real quick before Mr. Stubbs starts?
Sure.
So the zoning commission
Yeah.
opening, are you going to elevate one of the alternate members to the open position on the board and then advertise for the alternate member, or how are you planning on doing that?
Yeah, in the tradition that we've tried to set is to ask the alternates if they're interested. So I need to have a discussion once I get the full notification in writing that the person is indeed stepping down. So I plan to reach out to the two alternates. You are aware of who they are, and see if they have interest in that position. Yes.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yes, sir.
Well, Dr. Cross is around. It's on down my report, but I'll just go ahead and ask now. Senior oversight, have we ever got an answer on whether that's
Senior oversight,
the vacancy?
the vacancies. So it's kind of a long, I'm trying to read through these notes. The agreements have not been rewritten yet. Hopefully that's something that has happened, that is going to happen. It is something that has to be presented before the city and then brought before the township as well. I mean, with the unclear, I'm sorry, about rules, and we're waiting on clarification. The problem that we're having is names of groups that are on the current agreement do not match names of current groups. So when they wrote these, I think it was in the late 90s, there are groups listed that are not here anymore, that are not around anymore. And so our problem is we can't really appoint someone because those groups aren't there. And so in the agreement, it says you could have to appoint somebody from a certain group, but that group no longer exists. So it's something that both the city and the township are going to have to go and look at that agreement, because we want to make sure that we are within our, we are legally appointing the right person and doing the right thing before we mess up, I guess, is kind of where we're at. So they have sent that to the city's attorney, to Mr. Shift, and are waiting on some clarification on that. And that's kind of where we're at with that.
So at some point, we'll probably have to send that to the Montgomery County Prosecutor's Office as well.
I would think so. And it's something that has to be brought before all of the township trustees. And then once it's rewritten, then we can discuss it and look at it. So yeah, all of those agreements between the city and the township for oversights, I don't believe has been looked at in quite some time. I will say they're talking like maybe 15 or 20 years. And honestly, I'm not sure that the city or the township was aware that there was any issue with it. It was brought before a citizen brought it to our attention at a meeting a little over a year ago, roughly, or maybe, I don't know, with COVID right now, probably right around a year. Before that, we were unaware that there was any issue with it. So that's kind of what we're waiting on.
Okay, I just know Dr. Cross had expressed interest, and if there's a vacancy, might as well fill it if possible. All right, I'll go ahead and move on to the rest of mine. Pool, we increased the prices for this year. Last year, we had a little bit of a financial issue, not being able to be open full capacity and all that. So we've increased the prices a little bit this year on day passes as well as family passes. It is cheaper if you're a resident of German Township or Germantown. One thing that has been brought up as a potential idea for our pool is with the JED agreement coming together, the idea has been pitched of a community-wide pool at the high school site of the JED. And listening to some of the ideas that have been pitched, I think it's a good idea, and I think we might be at a good time where this could happen. Germantown Pool is currently looking at a new filtration system in the price range of $170,000. Farmersville Pool currently has issues with its, they tried to put a liner in like we did several years ago, but there's some reason with the foundation that they can't, is what's been brought to me. And I don't know exactly what the issue is, but for some reason they can't do the liner. Their liner was gonna cost somewhere in the range of $120,000. So between the two of those right now of costs that need to be paid to keep both pools running, maybe in the long run, and I'm not saying this is what we should do, but it's something to think about. Maybe in the long run, we have a joint community pool with Jackson Township, Farmersville, and Germantown that's at the central site of the JED. And since we're moving all the schools out there to be the central part of the community, I think it makes a whole lot of sense to at least consider the idea of having the pool moved to that location. Again, we're just in the idea phase. The city of Germantown says we're 5 to 6 years out on a plan like that. I think we could go a little bit quicker, especially with all the construction that's going to be going on out there. If we can get a spot and have it, so we're sharing parking lots, we're sharing resources, and people are going to be out there anyway. So that's just something for you guys to think about. And I know I've talked to a Jackson Township trustee as well and pitched the idea. I'm not sure where he's at on it, but I think it makes sense for our community. An issue with that could be that Jackson Township goes all the way up to 35. There you're including New Lebanon schools too, so it couldn't be the Valley View pool in Germantown, German Township, Jackson Township, Farmersville pool. I have to wait too long to name. But it's definitely something to consider. But the issue is not to exclude the upper part of Jackson Township, but that does get into a different school district if what we're trying to follow. So any ideas you may have on that or suggestions, I'll be more than happy to entertain. And I honestly, just looking at it from, we're at the infancy stage of an idea, but to me, it makes sense if we're creating a JED to be a central part of our community. Why not, when we have an opportunity to combine, it would be one levy for 4 communities. I think it's cost saving in the long run, and it could be, we could have a really nice facility out there. I know one of the ideas pitched is have the pool and then have it domed in the winter. So you could have a year-round pool and then our swim team, New Lebanon swim team, that could be things in place that they use because they get their times for practice for swim team are like 9 o'clock and 9:30 at night. So if we had something here that we could control and then you could rent it out for it's a potentially revenue to swim clubs, to parties. So just something to keep in mind. Back to the filtration system. There was a little bit of a rush by some members to try and get that done before the season started this year, but with timing wise, it's not going to happen. So we're looking at discussing the filtration system again later, but at the end of the season, there's no way it's going to get done. There's no way with the time frame given that it could have been done without affecting our opening date, and we don't want to lose a single day after the poor year we had last year. That's it for the pool. Cemetery looks good. They've made it through mowing. I think the first time Mark Steinecker did the update kit on the 2 Ferris lawnmowers. That was the warranty issue I brought up at a previous meeting. And he did whatever he was supposed to. The leak stopped, so that problem is taking care of itself. One other thing, and I should have brought this up earlier when Jeremy was still on, he had mentioned the ceiling of the township windows. And I talked to him. I had stopped by a week or so ago and talked to him about it. And I looked at the outside, and you can see where it's definitely dry rotted and cracked and where the water's coming in. And he said it's pretty specific. When I talked to Jeremy and Scott, it's a pretty specific job. And the company that had got the quote to us that's what they do. Right. So I think it's if not this month when Jeremy's off, but maybe next month we need to look into getting those window seals taken care of, and it'll hopefully last 20 years and go forward with that. But with Jeremy not on here, I don't want to do anything tonight without his input, so.
Remind me if you do you remember where we left that? Because I remember Jeremy was proponent to where he thought it made sense. There was actually, I think, Mr. Cleveland even was saying that's a good idea. So
Yeah,
did we ask for a second?
I think that's what we want to get a second, if possible.
Okay, okay.
That was my recollection, so I was trying to read through my notes.
That is correct. You asked him to find a second quote. And I'm not
Okay.
sure where that
So
stands. He and I have not discussed it.
I'll put a note here to myself to send him an email and just ask him for the next meeting if either he can get a second quote or come back to us on not being able to, and we can make a decision then.
Okay, all right. And then lastly, if anybody on the meeting knows of anybody that wants the backhoe in very good condition,
There you go.
send them to Gov Deals because Jeremy does a fantastic job of keeping our equipment in great shape. They keep it washed down, minimal rust, and looks great. It operates as it should. So, and that concludes my report.
I had a couple questions on the pool thing, because
Sure.
I think it's very interesting that the couple of things that say, you said you're not gonna address the filtration this year, you don't think?
Not before the season.
Yeah.
So we're looking at the end of the season, so
Okay.
it doesn't affect our.
And if you guys did decide to invest in that 170 there, would that kind of like put a kill to the joint plan,
Well,
or
that's-
would it make it more difficult?
That's part of my concern, that it seemed to be rushed
Mhm.
by people down there to get this taken care of before the season started, which didn't make sense in the time we had. I believe that the filtration system can be moved.
Okay.
So even if they went forward with the cost, that we could take that filtration system,
Okay.
what we're upgrading to,
Yep.
and move it to the new facility, if there is a new facility.
Okay.
Jackson Township, on the other hand, if they put $120,000 liner in, that's a one-time custom made, they can't do anything with it. So, again, that's why I think now is the time to look at it.
Right, next step's probably talking to Jed.
Well, either the JED or the school's gonna own all that land.
Mm-hmm.
And I believe Mr. Richards has been brought in on the idea and has likes it, or at least the beginning stages of it.
Mm-hmm.
So land needs to happen, a spot for it out there.
Yeah.
And then, but again, ideas have to start somewhere. So, I mean, it makes sense to me.
Yeah, I was just trying to make sure before we finish tonight, like what we thought could be potentially next steps, just so
Yeah,
at least gets the right evaluation. I mean, I know the JED can't make the decision on it, but all the right entities are there. If we can talk to them to go back and say, okay, speak to some of your pool representatives, see whether
Right.
this idea has, you know,
Right.
merit or whatever, what they think. But I agree, I think the school is gonna have a undue influence on that. So,
Right,
because
right.
they get the opportunity to say yes or no with the land that they own. So, no, I think it makes sense from my perspective. I don't know if you have any thoughts, Mr. Reed.
My thoughts are, a lot of children from the town walk to the pool, and so I think once you put it out in the township area, it's gonna make it harder for kids whose parents work Monday through Friday to get them out to the pool. So that would be, I mean, I worked at Farmersville for a long time. I managed Farmersville, I loved it out there, but it made it hard, the location of the Farmersville pool, for people whose moms and dads work and they're 10, 11, 12 years old. They can go to the pool on their own. They don't have a way to get there. They did build a bike path eventually towards the end of me working there, which opened it up a little bit, but that would be my only fear with that location, is then it's really limiting the walking access for, you know, Farmersville folks to go to their pool, or Germantown folks to go to their pool. So that would be my only qualm about that.
Well, we do like the kids to be supervised most of the time too, so whether it be a babysitter or whoever.
I understand what we like, but facts are they aren't, unfortunately. So,
Yeah, I wonder, I mean, it'd be for the pools to decide on that, and my question, which would be, you know, can we support continually to community pools? You know, I wonder what the revenues have been doing over the last 10 years. And
Well, and that's where, if we can combine, if you take the revenue that Farmersville brings in, but I think Farmersville, Jackson Township, theirs is set up differently, so they run a park levy that includes the pool, if I understand it right.
Okay.
So But if you take the revenue, basically what we're getting and add it to what they're getting,
Yeah.
we could have a pretty decent facility.
Sure.
One decent facility with, I want to not double the money, but somewhere in there, and you'd be able to finance it easier. It could be a pretty nice facility, potentially. So.
Okay. Well, I think it's got at least worth evaluating. So anybody else have any other questions before we finish up here?
I have a question for you, Mr. Raymer. Are they doing a parade for opening day? Did the park board discuss that during their meeting?
No, we have not discussed a parade for opening day, and I don't think that'll be in the cards for this
Okay.
year. So.
That was my only question.
So I know they do the Christmas one, which we obviously didn't do last year. We did something a little bit different, but is that not, because this is my first time on the Parks Board go around, I wasn't here last May, is that not held or just done by the VV base?
It is, but Parks Board, I think, I don't want to say help, but they are definitely involved in some fashion with it.
Well, we haven't had any discussions on that, so I don't know because I think opening day is within the next.
May 1st, yeah.
May 1st, so we wouldn't be involved in that, but I haven't heard from VV base, and I've got kids playing in it, so I haven't heard anything about opening day on the parade, so.
They were just talking about this, so we're waiting to hear from the board, and so I was like, oh, I was curious.
Well, because we have people on the board that are actually a part of VV base.
VV base, that's right, and so that's why I think they kind of played it hand in hand
Well,
together.
let's hope that we bring back our Memorial Day parade and our 4th of July parade, because canceling those last year, well, at least definitely the 4th of July parade was questionable. But hopefully bring those back for the community.
I will take that message back. So, okay, no other questions. I think I'm gonna make a motion to close the meeting tonight.
I'll second.
Who seconded, Mr. Stubbs?
Yes.
Thank you. Any discussion of the motion to adjourn? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? I doubt it. All right, we are adjourned at 9:02. Good night, everyone.